Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Today I am speaking with Karam Bassam. Karam used to be a translator for Ideas Beyond Borders. Now he's a musician. And he actually had a good piece out that I'll put the link down to. It was about heavy metal and his band. So, hi Karam, thank you for coming on.
Hello. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
I just wanted to start off with a couple of things. So that one article you wrote about heavy metal music.
Mhm.
Now, on my end, it was my family moved to Canada when I was 6. We moved here from India. And the first piece of music I ever owned, and this was in the 70s, so yeah, whatever, was on
Mm.
8-track. I owned Welcome to My Nightmare by Alice Cooper. So it's like,
That's old school.
yeah, so like the metal thing there kind of resonated with me as well. Like, for me, it was like the old school metal. Like I saw, I so Black Sabbath with Dio.
Yeah, they were just getting started back then.
Yeah, so like I was like I said, a lot of the old school stuff, but yeah, I really like that article. So if we could start with that a little bit, like how you got into that and like, you know, how that goes over in the Middle East.
Well, generally, I've been into metal music for a long time now.
Mhm.
Um, I first started doing covers for the songs I liked back then. Then in 2012, I joined my first band officially, and it's still active until now. Later in 2019, I joined the band, which plays a very different subgenre of metal. Um, European countries like Sweden, Finland, what they call the Gothenburg metal, because this is where the style we play generated from originally. The style is called melodic death metal. Um, Actually, metal in general in the Middle East started to thrive almost about 10 to 15 years ago. Many bands started releasing songs and albums. Uh, it's different from one country to another because of the, let's say, the political system in each country and how this type of music is generally dealt with in each country. Somewhere it's seen as a form of Satanism, or is just unacceptable, aggressive way to express oneself, is just not accepted at all. Um, like in Iraq, for example, some bands formed um, in the late 2000s, but then they had to switch to like other genres. The same, I mean, the same musicians had to switch to other genres, or at least just keep their music for online releases without playing any live shows anymore because of the uh, security situation in the country.
Now you'd mentioned that like for country to country, but just out of curiosity, like the
Yeah,
Satanism thing, that because I mean that was one of the big things in the
yeah,
in the U.S. and Canada and in the 80s and the 90s, like with the Christian right. Oh, they're
yeah,
worshiping
yeah.
Satan.
I know
It's
about
the
that.
sign of the devil. Blah blah blah. So I'm just wondering, like in places like the
It's
middle,
much worse here, actually.
obviously, like yeah, because I mean, you know, say what you want about the evangelical
Yeah,
Christians, the Salafi Islam that comes out of Saudi
yeah. I
is a
mean,
lot worse
they're
than that. Like,
definitely incomparable. I mean, whatever the evangelical Christians used to do back then, like like mostly what they did was talking and trying to enforce their beliefs onto certain groups of people or onto those bands or musicians, but uh, maybe I mean, that was the maximum it could get. But in the Middle East or in Arab countries in general, it can get much worse, much worse than that. Um, it can get to the level of even getting death threats or getting jailed, like what happened recently with the band from with a death metal band from Iran. Yeah,
Yeah. I was going to mention that. I couldn't remember if it was Iran or Lebanon, but I remember there was a band that
yeah.
just recently got arrested.
It was from Iran, but then they managed to flee from the country. I think they are in Canada now or in some European country.
Metal music out here, and then the same thing was with like the hardcore punk, or if you had like things like Rage Against the Machine, or things like like which like
Mm.
more on the like the rap side, like it was all angry music, and it was a way for people to let out their frustrations and stuff. Like, is that why it kind of strikes a chord with people in the Middle East? I mean, is it that, like, is it the like the frustration with the youth? Because I mean, you still see the like Iran still having
Yeah,
protests. The youth were leading a lot of the protests. So is that what kind of resonates with the people who like it, or like what? How did metal gain a
I would
following out
say
there?
the let's say the musical themes and the lyrical themes of metal in the Middle East are almost the same as the lyrical themes in any other countries. I mean, metal in general is a vast space to express yourself. There's a lot of lyrical themes you can talk about, as you mentioned. For example, bands like Rage Against the Machine, they talk about they have those anti-establishment lyrical themes. They talk mainly about politics, criticizing the politics in the country, things like that. But and that's definitely a part that was included in the albums and the songs that were released in the Middle East by the bands. But it also included many other deeper themes in those albums and songs, like things that talk about existence, mythology, and this was one of the things that we included in our album as well as a band, Dead Tears. We were trying to uh, use those themes, those dark themes, to deliver a message, because the way I see it is those dystopian looking music videos that you see, or those lyrics that you read usually in metal, I see them as a reflection of reality. They're not like the pop songs that you usually, the popular songs in general that you listen to or see on the internet, where they are mostly happy or about love or relationships or like simple things like that. No, I mean, metal does sound and look aggressive, but it's its way to express itself. It's the way of this music to show the real side of the world in a way to try to show that problem, show the real problem that is going on. Many bands talk about um, environment related issues, for example, climate change, the clearing of rainforest, as an example. And I've mentioned those in my articles as well, and I gave examples for them.
Like something you'd mentioned. Now I spent close to 13 years in like working as a
Mhm.
contractor with the military. So and almost 7 of those were in Afghanistan. So, and that, like, I spent, I said between 2004 and 2014, like in that 10-year span, I was in Afghanistan for almost 7. So, like I saw a lot of the destruction
Yeah,
from the war, then like, the Civil War before the Americans went in, everything. So, when you were mentioning that, like, you're kind of reflecting your reality, like the dystopian stuff. So, I mean, if you don't mind, like, what was it like in Iraq? Like, I mean, if you're talking about, a scene starting in
Yeah.
2012, you still, I mean, you have like the beginnings of ISIS around then, right? Like you have
Actually, the
Al
scene in
Qaeda in
Iraq
Iraq
started
coming
before
in
that.
around there.
Like I said, I joined my first band
Okay.
in 2012, but the scene started before that.
Hmm.
There was actually
Okay.
rock and metal bands even before the American invasion, before 2003, and then
Okay.
in about 2006, seven, bands started to form. Few bands started to form. Yeah. So in Iraq, but the in the he talked about the 2012 and then the beginning of ISIS, but also in 2006 and 7 in Iraq, there was a civil war basically going on, especially in areas of the middle and the south of Iraq between the Shia and the Sunni sectors. People were killing each other because of their religious beliefs. Um, there were militias everywhere, Sunni militias and Shia militias, killing people just by simply looking at their ID to see which religious sect they follow, and then they decide to either spare their life or kill them depending on what they read in that piece of paper. This was the situation in Iraq back then, and some of the bands used this to be included in their albums and lyrics. So it wasn't better than
Okay.
ISIS back then.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, no. Look. I don't want to say it was, but I mean, I was. It's just like
yeah,
the only reason I brought that up is because I mean, again, ISIS, when
yeah,
in the areas they controlled, they were going back to you know the original
yeah,
laws, basically,
yeah.
like no
Exactly.
music, no
It was
nothing.
much
So it
worse.
was,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But don't get me wrong. Like I said, I saw what. And again, when I say I saw, like, I was on military bases. Yes, I did go out and I did travel around Afghanistan and stuff. But you know, I'm not trying to make light of like any kind of war that was
yeah,
going on there. I know. I mean, I wasn't there, but
yeah.
I followed some of the things. So I think I have a small understanding of what some of that stuff was out there. But yeah, no, I mean, like, it's just because like I've spoken to a couple of people about some of the situations out there, and this is like not even so much as like getting into the war or anything like that, but like some of the attitudes they're seeing from the West. Like one guy, he was
Mm.
Jordanian. He's in the West now. I don't know exactly where. Um, but I remember him giving a talk, and he was talking about that. I think it was a cartoonist who was killed on the court steps, and he's like, "You guys are out here worrying about making people hurting people's feelings, and we're getting killed out here." And like another person I
Talking
spoke
about the
to, and
French
she was also
cartoons.
Jordanian, and she was talking about no, not the French cartoons. It was a cartoonist in Jordan, and he had done something. He'd made a Facebook post or something like that, and he was brought up on blasphemy
Yeah, that's
laws,
very possible. Yeah.
and on this, and then like as he was going to the court to like for his case, he was killed on the court steps. So yeah, like he was talking about that, but it was so like do you when you see some of the stuff coming out of the West, like you uh like I've spoken to Iranians who the people there supported Trump because he was strong on the regime, and now they're kind of feeling fearful of the way
Yeah,
Biden's dealing with the
because he's
regime now.
he's doing it. He's more easy
Like
on their in the Iranian regime. At least this is how it looks like.
yeah, so I mean like attitudes like things like that in the West, and I mean you know like I personally I think there's got to be a medium between Trump and Biden. I don't think either
Yeah,
was
exactly.
perfect here, but like, but like when you see stuff like that in the Middle East, like how does that, like when your friends talk about stuff like that, like is there's things you wish you'd see coming out of the West that would be helpful for like people like you out there, or like or just like average people who just want to get on with their lives?
I mean, I don't believe that they're like, let's say, politics wise. I don't believe that there's any government who that is willing to uh, support a an Arab country without getting some kind of benefit out of it, especially in America, for example. Yeah, I mean, because everywhere there is an intervention from the U.S. or any other country, uh, you eventually see that they got something out of it, like intervening, like the Iraq War, for example. Um, they mainly did it because of the oil. That was like the main reason for doing so, and they're still benefiting from it. So I don't really believe that, but we just like from like no, the average people when they talk about it, they just hope for something good for them to come out of it, but they don't really. They know it's not going to happen. Like sometimes something good might happen to you on a personal level, but on the long term, uh, it might not be good.
Like I want to touch on like I'd mentioned you used to translate for Ideas Beyond Borders. I'd like to touch on that a little bit if you don't mind. Like now, like how did you start with that?
um, I know Ahmed. Now he's managing Beit Al Hikmah 2.0, and I got to know Faisal through Facebook actually, and I started from there. I joined them, started to translate articles. It was a very interesting thing to do, feeling that you're doing something with a purpose. It's just not just like a normal job that you just want to finish and get on with your life. No, you feel like you're doing something people in the future will be benefiting from. This was the part that I liked about it the most, actually.
You were translating articles, and
Yeah,
I've been following Ideas Beyond Borders. I mean, seeing some of the stuff they're doing, and I know like they were doing a lot of stuff during COVID and things like that. But I mean, again, this is from an outsider's perspective here. So, but like, just seeing about the Middle East and stuff, and it's you know, uh, like conspiracy theories that because of the
yeah,
amount of censorship, there just seems to be a lot of conspiracy theories. I mean, like places like Iran, I mean, they always point to the Mossadegh thing, which was a
yeah.
conspiracy, and like
This happens a
it
lot
was
here.
done, it was there, but like, oh, yeah, it's like, oh, that happened. See, like that can happen, it can happen again. So, what was it like trying to get information out, and it's when there's that level of mistrust?
I mean, when you're trying to translate something into Arabic, sometimes you need maybe to look up some words that are synonyms in Arabic for this specific topic. When you search for the same topic in Arabic language, in let's say you're using Google in Arabic and you search for the topic, especially if it's something science related, um, you won't find a lot of websites or articles mentioning these things. While if you search in English, you'll find much more. The problem with the Arabic websites and internet, well, most of them, what they're interested in is mainly religion and religious discussions, and horoscopes and conspiracy theories. You'll find a lot of those. Like, at least for me, in my opinion, those are the three main categories that can be found in Arabic websites. Uh,
Can I just, sorry, I just have to ask because it just, how do you get from religion to horoscopes? Because you would think like the horoscopes would fall under witchcraft. And
it's just it's just for me, it just says that, it says to me that people don't really talk about deep things. I mean, horoscopes is a very superficial subject to talk about, and there's a lot of websites mentioning that talks about that. I mean, horoscopes and things like it, not only horoscopes, but anything that might be similar to it. Okay. Things that are totally unuseful, you know, just useless topics, just talks.
no, sorry, like I said, it just struck me as funny, like
Yeah, I
religion
mean,
and horoscopes.
this is how it is. And conspiracy theories, you'll find a lot of them. I mean, let me give you an example about conspiracy theories. You'll find till today Arabic websites mentioning the subject of talking about the conspiracy theory of NASA and the moon landing. They're still talking about this till this very day. While in the West or in the US, for example, it was a thing like many years ago, but nobody talks about it anymore. I mean, it was almost.
I actually, it's you've had like NBA stars. You've actually had some famous people talking about the fake moon landing and talking about flat Earth, and this was in the last
But
few
it's not
years.
like before. I mean, it if you
Yeah, I know,
compare
but
it,
it's
if you
still there.
compare it to before, I mean, it's much less.
Mhm.
While here um, it's much more common. And the other thing is, when you search for the topic, for this topic in English, you'll find a lot of sources that refute these claims. While in Arabic, you'll find more sources that post this claim, and you'll find very few sources that might refute it. So people are more interested in just resharing this conspiracy theory instead of looking it up and investigating the topic for themselves.
Just like kind of sticking with this because I know some of the books that
Mm.
like IBB is translated, and like I know, like I said, they did a lot on Wikipedia and stuff too. But like a couple of people I've spoken to have, and these are again
Mm.
from parts of the Middle East, and they've mentioned how some of the Western ideologies, like post-colonialism especially, how that can be used when people are trying to bring up things like secularism or trying to bring up, you know, enlightenment values or things like that. They'll just say, no, no, you're trying to put Western values on us.
Yeah, there is a
And
resistance. Yeah,
like, like, yeah, like, I mean, is there a change? Do you see like between people who are younger,
definitely.
like
Yeah,
are more younger people wanting to see like, for lack of a better term, like enlightenment values, or like how's
yeah.
that going there?
In my opinion, from what I see, there's a lot of change. I mean, let's talk about Iraq, for example. If I compare the people of Iraq and the way they look at things now to the way they used to look at things before, I mean, it's much more different in a better way. For example, if we go back 10 years ago, criticizing a religious figure or religious leader, for example, it was a big no-no. Nobody would ever dare to speak of something like this in public or over the internet, or even in a normal conversation between few people. While now it's much more common, and that's basically uh, came like this for two reasons. The first reason is people are just sick of the corruptions that they're seeing every day, and that is the corruption that is just getting worse and worse day by day. I mean, in Iraq, for example, since 2003 till now, everything, literally everything in the country, it just gets worse. And the ruling parties, most of them, they claim to be religious parties. So people used to believe them in the beginning or try to give them chances, but now people are just sick of this. They're saying that there's no any positive results coming out of this. The second reason is what you mentioned. Um, like in a country like Iraq, for example, we didn't have internet, for example, before, or even mobile phones before 2003. These things started to come to the country after the war. So people started seeing things from different perspectives, started to travel, see other countries, meet other people. I mean, just surfing the internet is is an enough way by itself to change your perspective about things. So yes, I can say there is a lot of change that is going on. We still have long way ahead, but people's opinions are changing.
I've used as an example when I've spoken to people, and so maybe you can give me you might have a different take on it. But I looked at, okay, so this was a few years back in Pakistan. Um, they said they made a clerical error because the printout of the oath of office came out for politicians, and there was one line that says
Mhm.
Muhammad is the last prophet, and that was in there to keep Ahmadis out of politics because Ahmadis believed that there was
Mm.
another prophet that came afterwards. And so there was about 200,000 citizens that went protesting, um, you know, down the streets of Islamabad, and then the military kind of supported the protesters over the government. And at the same time, you had people rising up in Iran, you had young people protesting in Iraq, you had other things going on
Mhm.
in other parts of the Middle East. And, you know, like I said this to people, like things like that. And, some of the things that Faisal told me about IBB, like he said, when he put out the first call for translators, there was like thousands of people right away that, you know,
Yeah,
were willing to translate. They were all young. So like, I'm like, I have more hope and optimism for the Middle East than I do for places like Pakistan, because Pakistan was, I mean, basically, Saudi and then Iran for a little while were just funding madrasas out there. And it was, either like
mm,
Salafi Wahhabi Islam or it was, hardcore Shia Islam. And that's what was being funded. And now that's all they've been getting. That's all they've been doing. And I mean, like I said, the population freaked out over,
yeah.
a clerical error, whereas the population in the Middle East seems like they want to get rid of those like those rigid strictures. Like I said, I have more optimism of you know civil secular societies coming up in the Middle East than I do in South Asia.
I mean, like 2019, there was
Mm-hmm.
protests in Iraq, followed by protests in Iran. They were inspired by each other, and that was very, very something very, very new and very different, because it wasn't like anything that happened before. Uh, the people who went out to the streets in those protests literally rejected everything that was being presented to them. They were calling for a secular political system in the country. But unfortunately, they were faced with brutal killings, and many died due to suffocation by gas, and or got kidnapped. But the point is, uh, they came out to claim something that they felt it was taken away from them, and they saw that the only way to fix things is to get rid of the religious political system in those countries, because in Iraq, uh, it's highly influenced. Iraq's political system, for example, is highly influenced by the Iranian regime, mainly due to the majority of the Shia population in both countries, and that doesn't apply only to those countries. I mean, I can see it in many Arab countries in general. Uh, People do want a change, and there's a lot of claims for secular change in those countries recently.
I remember, late
Hmm.
'80s, early '90s, and you're seeing some of this stuff, and there wasn't a lot coming out. And then more like after 9/11, so like when the U.S. went back into the Middle East, from like an older population, secularism had a bad name, and I can understand why. I mean, like they didn't. I don't think they even really had a term, but you know, because
Yeah,
Assad and Gaddafi and even Hussein for a while were touted as
yeah.
secular leaders. And so secularism had a really bad name. And I mean, like I said, I understandably so, and I can get it, but you know, it's like because of the internet, do you think people are getting a new understanding of what that means? Like like are they saying that maybe Gaddafi wasn't a secular leader?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, internet is a major source of getting the right information, and this is what happened here. People don't buy that the bullshit that they see or hear on the government media anymore. They simply don't take it anymore. Um, Also, not only internet, but in the recent years, it became easier to publish books that were uh, that were prohibited before. I mean, now in Iraq, if you go to the bookstores, uh, you see you will find books talking about secularism, atheism, books criticizing religion, things that were prohibited in many countries before. Uh, Now is just out there for anybody to buy and read them. So people are getting more educated, definitely.
On that topic, because you'd mentioned Beit al Hikmah 2.0, so like the
Mm.
original House of Wisdom. Now, I've read some of the stuff of like like the scholars from the Golden Age. So like you had the side of like Al Ghazali, and then you had the other on the other side you had people like you know um, Avicenna and Averroes and like people like that. Like, and those were like, from my understanding, like a lot of those like people like Averroes and that were you were banned from studying them in the Middle East as well. Like they didn't want you like the only reason I knew about them was like because they're out of the West, but like was that the case, or are those being allowed back in, or how's that
I
working?
mean, everything is basically allowed back in now. When I was talking about the
Okay.
prohibited uh, books, they were forbidden to be published or printed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was talking about books from Western countries, from by Western authors. Um, Things like, for example, Richard Dawkins. Let's say Richard Dawkins' books, for example, Christopher
Yeah.
Hitchens, things like that. Um, you can easily find them anywhere right now. So also translation helped to make those educational materials, if we can call them that, more available. I remember when there was a time when it was hard to even find a good Arabic translation for these types of books on the internet. But right now, uh, it became much easier. So translation made that
Okay.
happen.
So yeah, that's good. I mean, like again, like you know, the work that they did, and like thank you very much for what you did, like there, because I think that's they keep like I keep hearing the thing, fighting bad ideas with good ideas, and as far as I can see, that's exactly what IBB was doing. Um, so what do you like? What are your future plans now? Like, are you still going to keep playing with the music and putting stuff
Yeah,
out, or?
definitely. I mean, recently, just a few days ago, we got, our band got sponsored by IBB to help us improve our music gear to keep making music. And I would like to thank them for that support. Uh, um, our plan as a band is to keep doing what we're doing. We want to, yeah. So my plan is, or our plan is definitely to keep making more music, keep trying to deliver important messages for things that we believe in through this music. It's our way to express ourselves. Um, we just finished we finished our first album and released it in December 2020, and we have a plan to start working on the second album, maybe the end of this year or next year. um, we're trying to tackle issues that we think are of importance. Uh, yeah, that's our plan as a band.
Okay, oh, that's cool. I mean, oh no, keep doing what you're doing, and there's again, like speaking to you, and I said I don't want to say I've spoken to a lot of people, but the few people I've spoken to from the Middle East, you know, they're like they're younger than I am, and it seems like they've got a passion to try to get things getting better out there. So it gives me some hope. So I'll keep doing what you're doing, man. It's great. Thank you very much for coming on. It was great talking to you.
Thanks to you. Thanks for having me.
All right, and thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back.